let's just go here, if you're okay, and we'll just see where, obviously this class is about service, but we can interject that into what we're talking about. But I think what we're talking about is real. So before we dive in, and I'm going to make sure, Grayling Clavell?
Clavell, yes.
Okay, it's a great name too, and I remember telling you that, before that you have a really great name. Tell us kind of who you are, what you do, why you're with us on the podcast today.
All right. My name's Grayling Clavell. I am currently an administrative assistant for a vice president of student services here at Grossmont College. And I am here in this program and on this podcast because I want to push myself to the limits and see what I am capable of and see what kind of a leader I can be. Especially, I think it's key that it's in service, because I served in the military previously for 8 years in the Air Force. I was in the services squadron. I'm now in student services. I'm all about serving.
Wow.
And so now that it's like a full circle moment coming back to me now that I'm realizing that what I'm good at, and relating back to your other podcast is one of the questions was, what brings you that joy, or what do you find effortlessly in that you do? And I think it's building relationships and serving others, and I'm hoping to see where this next venture goes for me.
So this is incredible. As Grayling and I were kind of talking about before we hopped on the podcast, that we both, in our own ways, are at a season of life where we're saying, okay, we've made it to a certain place. We're happy where we are. We're grateful, but we want to move to the next level, right? Whether it's with the business or positions or, where we're going. And so what we thought we would do is just kind of have that conversation for all of us. And I'm talking to the class now, just have that class, have this conversation for all of us. And I think, going back to what you just said, Grayling, it's going to lead back to this idea of service and how do we do this? So I'm trying to think of the first question to ask, because, this is going to be a really good conversation. I'm just going to throw it out there, Grayling. What's next for Grayling? As you're thinking about this program, where you're going service, what do you see being next for Grayling Clavell?
I hope to serve in some capacity as a leader, whether hopefully in higher education. I've been in higher education for almost 17 years now, and I'm really hoping to serve in some capacity in the student services sector, the division of a dean, a supervisor. And if not, I like to mimic a lot of the traits that some really profound and great leaders have been and impacted my life, whether it be military or in the public sector, the higher education, and relate that, give that back to the community and the people that I serve. And this is a new road for me, because I've always been family driven, not so much career driven. And now, over the past few years, I've really been trying to harness my drive in my career and provide for my family and also those around me. I work in the same community that I grew up in. I went to my high school that I graduated from is literally a 5-minute drive from where I work.
Which high school is that? Is that Grossmont?
West Hills High School.
West Hill. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a beautiful high school, by the way. Yeah, it's a great location.
Yeah, so I'm serving my community. I live 7 miles away from my work.
Wow.
This is my community that I work at, and I'm proud of that. And I want to. There's definitely we have our issues. We have promises. We have a lot of things going, but we have a really good community here, and I want to serve it.
I love that. Okay, so let's dive in on that. Okay. The one thing I love about this program, the MAOL program, is that we attract a lot of people who are it can kind of share in what you share. We have a lot of people who come out of the military. Maybe they've done 20 years and they're trying to see what's next as they go into the next phase. We have a lot of people who are kind of mid-career and they're saying, okay, I've done this for a while, but now I realize I want to go to the next level. How do I do this? So I just want to throw out some questions and then I'll throw out thoughts as well. How does someone get to, and I think you and I are probably the same stage in life in terms of ages. I won't throw our ages out there, but I'm guessing we're pretty close to the same. All right. How does someone in our stage of life, and again, I know there are several in our programs, how do they begin to have that question and say, I'm here, but I'm ready to go to the next level? How do we begin to start doing that, Graylin?
Oh, I think if you're living in California, you see the rise in costs. I'm being comical, but also serious. No, I think it's from within. I think um, for me, I was sitting there for months on end, realizing I'm in a job that that I can do well. Um, but am I serving the best of my ability? Am I maximizing the potential and the strengths that I have? Is there more for me? And the resounding answer was yes. And um, I was in a conference. I serve in different capacities at my job. And I was at a retreat with some of our administrators and deans, and I was giving my input on some matters. And one of the deans came up to me and said, "You would make a good dean." And it just kind of
Wow,
and that kind of triggered me. And
that's huge.
it was like the verbal okay and
Yeah.
push that I needed to be like, okay, I really needed to step out on my uh, out of my comfort zone and kind of attack them, see what I can do. And lucky enough, I found this program at Point Loma. I'm very happy with it. I had the distinct pleasure of my first class being in your class, and um, it really not just motivated me, but psyched me up to see what's out there. What more am I capable of? So,
Well, it's interesting. Graylin, I told my wife about you. I said, this is somebody who really gets it, right? This is somebody who want, and it's cool to have, people who kind of join this program because not everybody does. Some people, and it's okay. I've learned not to judge anybody for motives or their work, but it's neat to see, and it's a rare few. Are the people who come in and say, I want to dive in, not just to kind of get this thing on my wall, but I really want to go to the next level in leadership. So what I hear you saying is when someone's moving to the next level, it's almost that there's a dream inside of us, but then
mhm,
somebody has to confirm that. And it was confirmed for you. Somebody on the outside said you would make a good dean. And then your next step was you decided to, I'm gonna sign up for a program, a
mhm,
leadership program, and see if this kind of helps me get to the next, gets to the next level. What are some of the challenges, maybe some of the inner challenges, maybe that you have faced or that other people will face as they're kind of moving, because what you're doing now, you're making some really big moves
right.
from where you are to dean, the leadership program. So, what are some of those inner challenges that we have to face?
I think it's for me it was the time commitment, but and the time away from my family. I have two kids. Luckily, they're growing up and teenagers now, so they're kind of more independent. But still, is that time commitment and knowing that sacrifice of being away from the family, which was my whole drive before this. I was an extreme family guy. That was my drive. That was my passion. It's still my family is still my passion, but sparing some time away from them, and also these classes, these tasks at hand. It's cumbersome. It's time consuming, and it's also like, do I have this?
Mhm.
Am I on the right or not so much questioning the path of the program, but like, man, these are in depth and really kind of taking me out of that comfort zone.
Mhm.
And what am I not good at? What are some things that I need to work on to make it to a good supervisor, manager, leader
Mhm.
role? And The first class I took with you, Professor, is we did a lot of self-examinations. We did a lot of self-assessments, and that opened a lot of eyes for me, a lot of avenues that, yeah, I need to definitely work on this. Or I thought I was stronger in this suit,
Mm,
and then I'm more capable in this area and that I had self-doubt in. And so it's been an eye-opening journey in just a quick past 12 months or 12 weeks. And I'm learning a lot more about myself and what I'm able to do. And I'm thankful for it. It's hard work and but I know that I have the capability now and I'm seeing it
mhm.
and it's really beneficial.
I'm going to be really excited to see the next several years for you as your career really begins to take off, and that's going to be exciting. You have lived a life of service, Grayling. That's one thing that you called out. That's one thing I've seen about you from your resume and kind of what you've done. When somebody's trying to get that mindset of service, which I think really is, and it's what we've talked about in the class too. It's not this, I'm going to go out and pick up trash for the, I mean, that could be service, but it really is this mindset of service that I'm going to give with the intention, right, from a leadership and business perspective, that if I invest enough in people or in products or whatever it is, the benefit's going to come back. So that's that mutual benefit kind of conversation we've had. How does someone begin to move from a mindset that says it's all about me into a mindset of service that I want to give back to the local community and I want to help?
I think that's been I'm very I'm personally I'm very selfish. I did this
I
program
am too,
just
Grayling. Same,
to
same.
to build me up and want me to provide a better paycheck for my family. But if it all said and done, I have to revert back to my faith. He served me. And
Wow.
we're just celebrating Easter and
Hmm.
the ultimate sacrifice for any of us. And he paid all the costs for me. And if I really truly am a Christian, if I truly live by that calling, then it's an act of service. And then on top of it, I've just seen so many people um, serve with their whole hearts, not expecting anything in return, and it and they were provided abundantly. And their all their um, needs were sufficient and met. And I think that I've had great examples of supervisors that were or selfless.
You mentioned that before. You said you've had some good leaders. What were some of the traits that you saw in some of the leaders that you look up to that have helped you dream bigger and move forward?
Um, the ones that come to mind are the ones that um, weren't afraid to roll up their sleeves and get into they knew what their title was, but they weren't afraid or they were happy to work with those that were lower. I don't want to say lower title, but essentially do the little work, do the busybody work, and do it with a smile on their face. They provided for their employees. They looked up and they wanted to build their employees up, not just come in and demand things out of them. They set the example of how we should, and they also a lot of the supervisors that come to my mind, um, they challenged me and they knew that there was more that I could do, even though it was uncomfortable for me. But they were there to back me up and help me out in
Mm.
circumstances and reflect back on those. So it's just um, those are key things that I took away. They were personable. They they saw good in others that they worked with, and they always tried to build them up instead of just come in and collect a paycheck.
One of the things that you talked about, and I've seen this from great leaders as well, when a great leader says, I'm going to do things that maybe aren't in my job description, things that I could delegate to someone, but we catch them doing that.
Mhm.
And it reminds me, because I've thought about that too, what makes that leader so good? It's a person who's on mission, right? And it's a person who said, I'm going to pursue this mission no matter what. So if I got to go over there and pick up that trash, I do it not because it's my job or not my job or someone else. I do it because it's part of the mission, right? I've got to
Right.
get this thing done because it's just what we do, you know? And that kind of goes back to what we talk about with if we live lives of service, it's that mutual benefit. It's going to come back in rewarding ways for us as well, right? Um, what's something you were talking about earlier? What's something? Okay, so here's a question I have for
Mhm.
you, Grayling. It's kind of a flip-sided question. What's something that you've heard in this class that you say, I've enjoyed and maybe I've grown from that? What's something that you've heard in this class that you say, I didn't, I don't necessarily agree with that. I might push back on that. I might go in a different direction on that.
Wow.
So that's kind of two different ways.
That's a very good question. I had to think about that one. Uh, in this class specifically, um, I I don't necessarily have. I don't think I've come across anything that I necessarily doubt or am skeptical about. I think there are some truth nuggets to everything that's been disclosed in the class. Whether you agree with it wholeheartedly or not, I
Mm,
do think that um, it has you. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I hear both sides of the story, but there's always some truth to it. And so for me, I haven't necessarily, I gotta be honest, I haven't necessarily heard anything that made me question like, I'm not sure about that.
mm.
Like, um, I apologize. I'm trying to draw some
No, you're good.
ideas.
I'm throwing questions at you. I'm just, you know,
Yeah.
and just so everyone knows, we didn't talk about any of this. We just got on and started riffing. So,
Yeah. No.
one of the things I was expecting is because the example I'm using is Coke Industries, right? Which is a
Mhm.
multi-billion. It's the second largest private company in the United States, sixth largest in the world. But Charles Koch has been a lightning rod in terms of politics, right? He's on the right, right? He's very much on the right. He's,
Yes.
free market and, no regulation. And so I've been a little surprised that I haven't heard anybody really push back on why are we using this guy because of
See,
that. Any thoughts
no,
you have?
you bring up a good point, but and I'm gonna call it what it is, in my ignorance, I have not known much about the
Got
Koch.
you.
I've heard about the Koch brothers
Koch
in the
brothers. That's right.
past,
Yeah.
and it wasn't flattering. But I'm reading his um the PDF that you sent, and I'm surprised that how come other companies and industries aren't trying to mimic this process? Because I mean, it is hearsay. What I'm seeing is very honorable. It's very realistic, and how I would want the company I work for to make. I look at our school district, and I wonder how can we implement some of these things. Um, but yes, there is that kind of shadow and over there that's just like calling out. Or I wasn't when I first heard about the Koch brother or Mr. Koch being in this some of the information that we were reading and stuff. I was like, I don't remember being hearing fondly of him.
Yeah.
But that's why we do these things. I think it's that's part of education. I think that's part
Mhm.
of like there's some things that we can take away from this and that person that might
Well,
for others.
and that was you. So this is how I came to know him. I was actually watching, I think it was a documentary on Netflix on Citizen United. And it's been a while since I've watched, so I can't even explain it. But basically it was that documentary was about, I don't know if you remember this, and I don't even know what state it was. Scott Walker's state when he was running for president, or he ran for president, but he was a governor. And it was basically about unions, right? So it was the Koch brothers are anti-union. I'm not personally an anti-union person, but they are, and they because they're free market and all that kind of stuff. And so that's how I found the Koch brothers, and I thought they were these evil people. And then I found this book, and it's somewhere in my office here. It's called Kochland, and it's this 700-page book that talks about how they built their business. And it transformed my life, but not in the way that I thought it was going. I thought it was going to make me hate them more, and I actually appreciated them more because of what's in that book, Good Prophet. He talks about these principles that he lives by that are I mean, and this person who wrote this book, okay, the book is right over there. The person who wrote this book was going in to try to find the worst things that they could about
Yeah.
Charles Koch. And what they actually found, and they even say in the book, we may not agree with all the businesses he's in, oil and trading and all this stuff, but he said, in all my time studying him, I could find no dealings of he's not a person who's out there doing wrongdoing. He's not cheating on his wife, he's not having affairs, he's not
Yeah.
stealing money from the company. He's very conservative in how he lives his life, right? But he's a person who's built this massive company.
Yeah.
And um so I guess I would ask, what's something that has stood out from you from Charles Koch and maybe Koch Industries, like a specific thing that we've talked about or that you've read that maybe we haven't talked about.
I do think that number one, I liked how in the very beginning of the course you gave that disclaimer about Charles Koch
Mm,
and how like, hey, you know, to regardless of what you think, this is what we have about the readings and let's digest on that. He very much preaches self-assessment and how we need to constantly oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting the philosopher he utilized, and we
well,
need to
yeah, it's that market-based management. He talks
market-based
what you can be, you must be, self-empowerment,
and how he continues the first thing that he does on the companies that he's looking to invest in or do is how's that top management doing and what
Yes.
are they providing, what are they kind of oozing out to their employees and stuff. And if that doesn't flow, if that doesn't
Right.
then he scraps it from the top and works from the top down to
Yes.
get the results because up there they're setting the precedent. And
Mhm.
like me and the supervisors that I admire and look at is what are they doing? How are they interacting with their employees, with their, whether it be military or whatnot? How are they setting the standard? And I
Mhm.
think that he's very much about self-reflection, self-assessment, and continual growth, which was something that I wasn't
Mhm.
until I recently joined this program. The only self-reflection I was doing was watching my weight and trying to exercise more.
Yeah.
Like, the self-reflection is that scale that's telling me get off. But
Mhm.
now it's more like, no, what you are or what it is that you must be, you should be. And
Yes.
and I think that I need to it's a good thing that we always challenge ourselves, even that virtual cycle.
Virtual cycle
Once
of
we've
mutual benefit.
accomplished,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, once we realize this certain potential, okay, what else is out there? What else more can I do?
Yes,
Never standing still.
that's right. That's right.
And he
I think
does it.
that's the thing that stood out as well is how do you build a big company, whether it's nonprofit, for profit, whether it's, if you're in higher ed and looking for new opportunities. That's one thing that I learned from the book Cokeland, from Good Profit, from that PDF, is it's saying, okay, once I've mastered this capability, and I didn't even know what that meant when I first started reading him. And what I've defined it as, it's kind of a talent or a gift, right? So on a personal level, it's like once I master this thing over here, whatever it is, right? So for me, it might be teaching. Now that I can't just rest on that and say, "Oh, I'll just be a good teacher the rest of my life." Now it's saying, "Okay, I've met, and I'm not saying I've mastered it, but when I do master it, then there's got to be another capability that I've got to add on to it, right? It can't just be we get to our certain, and I know that's what you were saying at the beginning. Both of us have said we don't want to just get to a certain point and stay there. It's about continuous improvement, continuous growth, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
he even admits how received like multiple degrees in engineering, but claimed he was the worst engineer. But now look at him. I mean, he's one of the wealthiest people alive, and he owns so many different businesses and industries. And it's
Absolutely.
just like he saw his flaws, but he saw what he was good at and what he excelled at and utilized that and kept growing. He never stopped short or just was content with where he was at or his company. So that was huge.
What does the next so coming back to you, if I could ask a personal question. So, and I'm very excited for your future journey to have someone say you're going to be a dean one day and you're doing the work, you're taking the steps. What will be some of those inner things that you are going to be doing over the next few weeks and months as you I promise you, in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm gonna look you up and you're gonna be a dean somewhere. And I'm really
I hope
excited
so.
about this. What will be, as you're thinking now, and even maybe lessons that we all can learn from Coke and Charles, what will be some of the things that you begin to do over the next few months and years that will put you in that position of being the dean outside of what you've already done? What are some things that you're going to continue to do?
I think for me, it's always examining my weaknesses and improving on those. I think um, and listening to those around me and seeing I liked how uh, one of the things that Coke I read about was that he always kind of had his upper management kind of digest and invest in the employees and hear from them as to what might the issues be at hand. And that helped correct a lot of issues that in the companies that he was investing in that were maybe not meeting the full potential of what they had. I think I look around in my atmosphere and I see um, the issues at hand, and I know I excel when I utilize my voice for others that aren't
Mm-hmm.
maybe able to or wanting to or shy to.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, just ex utilizing that, enhancing that, and also um, I think one of the things I learned the most is listen more and talk less. Even
Mm.
though I just said that I'd be vocal for those that can, but it's very important to listen and observe more and then not react. My one of my supervisors that I miss who recently retired was like um, he said not to react, but what's the word? It was that um, be proactive and not reactive.
Oh, I love that. I
So
love that. Be
so
proactive,
it's
not
just
reactive.
yeah, I have many lessons ahead of me, even outside this master's program. But if I can keep a mental Rolodex and file system in my head and utilize the experience that I've gained. I've done numerous jobs. I've been in the military. I worked when I got out as a night custodian while I went to school. Then I somehow managed a gig as a loan processor right before the bubble burst,
Oh, wow.
and then I found myself as an admin assistant in higher education. So um, all that to say is my I know people. I understand relationships,
Mhm.
and it's important for me as to be a successful leader is that I continue to enhance those relationships, build upon them, but also know the fine line as to I think one of my weaknesses is uh, saying too much and not delivering. So
Mm.
I need to build on those weaknesses.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's important that I use like sports analogies. You're always working on
Yep.
the weaknesses to make you a better player or whatnot. And I tell my daughter that who's in soccer, work on the things you don't want to work on, and that will make you a better player.
That's so good. That's so good. And I want to say, and I'm speaking to the class now. I want you all to know that Grayling in his short time in the program, and I'm excited for the rest of your time in the program as well, I've seen you to be a very self-reflective person. I mean, you care about these assignments, you're diving in. And so I think um within the next 2 to 3 years, when I see you in that role as a dean, I think a lot of it is going to come back to what I've already seen you do in this class. And it's just that reflection and really taking that seriously. So here's what I want to do, Graylin. We're getting close to time here. I'd like to come up with 3 questions that we want to ask for our people to reflect on based on what we talked about, or just any question you want to throw out there for, our class. And then I want to wrap it up with you giving us final thoughts on kind of a life of service for this podcast about what that looks like. So let's think of 3 questions that we can ask. So what
Mhm.
might be one question that we could ask?
For and I'm going to answer this too, and think on this. What are your weaknesses? We've done self-assessments and all that. Really, maybe in the workplace and maybe wherever personal whatnot that can um, reflect back into the workplace. What is a weakness or two that you uh, notice that you can work on? And then uh, the follow-up to that is, what are some ways that you can work on those weaknesses?
That's really good.
Um, and then uh, how can you um, serve maybe those that are following in your footsteps? Like, what advice would you give? Your
Oh, that's so good. Okay. All right. So these are the three questions. This is good. Question number one, to the extent you feel comfortable, right? Writing out, well, what are some weaknesses that you would point out that you need to work on? Grayling mentioned some in his. I would say for me, I would copy what Grayling. I think we probably have some similar personality traits where if I'm not careful, I speak too much and listen too little, right? So I'm going to admit that to all of you. So you in this, so what are three weaknesses that you would say? And then Grayling, you had a great follow-up question to that, which would be,
uh, how would you work on improving those weaknesses?
how would you work on improving those weaknesses? And then the third question, which is really good.
Uh, how can you oh shoot, I just forgot it. How would you be able to um oh, I apologize.
No,
I'm
it's
drawing
good
a
because
blank.
I can actually rewind this and
Yeah.
and find out what the question was. It was such a good question. Um, so I'd say go back and listen. All right. So we already gave you the three questions. I'm just go back. He mentioned the third question. I should have been writing it down as you were saying it. It was a really good question. So those are the three questions, that we want you to answer today. Just that kind of mode of self-reflection. Final thoughts, Graylin. What would you tell your cohort, other people in the class trying to move to the next level? What's some advice that you would give based on the journey that you're in right now? That's what I love about this conversation. You're showing us what it looks like to do this right now.
I would say thrive in the uncomfortable, give it your all, and really utilize this time to see what you're made of and what is out there for you. And don't be afraid of the unknown, like I'm trying to convince myself to do right now. I'm just thankful for the opportunity that I have to grow and build myself up in this program and learn valuable um, self-reflection antidotes for myself and how to be an improvement in my professional and personal life.
Graylin, thank you so much for that. I was sharing with Graylin when we first logged on. One of the greatest quotes I've heard in recent, I think it's from the E-Myth Revisited, one of the greatest quotes, your business, and I would say your organization, and I'm speaking to the class here, your business, your organization, your family, whatever it is around you is a reflection of who you are. And that has hit me like a ton of bricks in recent weeks. And so when Graylin's talking about the importance of reflection, I hope that you hear this. I have seen the greatest leaders I've seen. I'm sure Graylin would say the same thing. These are people who are self-reflective. They know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, and out of that comes self-confidence. So please dive into these questions this week. This is going to be good for all of us as we just want to learn more about ourselves. Graylin, thank you for being on the podcast with me. I know we've been talking about this for a few weeks and going back and forth. I really appreciate this. Thank you, class, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Prof JC Leadership Podcast. Take care, everybody.